We can sum up each economic system in one line. Capitalism is based on human greed. Socialism is based on human need, right? No, wrong, so wrong. It's exactly backwards. And I'll prove it to you. Been on Amazon lately? Each of the thousands of products Amazon offers represents the work of people who believe they have something you want or need. If they're right, they prosper. If they're wrong, they don't. That's how the free market works. It encourages people to improve their lives by satisfying the needs of others. No one starts a business making a thing or providing a service for themselves. They start a business to make things or provide services for others. I speak from personal experience. When I was the CEO of the company that owns Carl's Jr. and Hardee's restaurant chains, we spent millions of dollars every year trying to determine what customers wanted. If our customers didn't like something, we changed it, and fast. Because if we didn't, our competitors would, pun intended, eat us for lunch. The consumer, that's you, has the ultimate power. In effect, you vote with every dollar you spend. In a socialist economy, the government has the ultimate power. It decides what you get from a limited supply it decides should exist. Instead of millions of people making millions of decisions about what they want, a few people, government elites, decide what people should have and how much they should pay for it. Not surprisingly, they always get it wrong. Have you ever noticed that late-stage socialist failures always run out of essential items like toilet paper? Of course, this isn't a problem for those who have the right connections with the right people. Those chosen few get whatever they want, but everyone else is out of luck.
Don't worry.
Venezuela, once the richest country in South America, is the most recent example of socialism driving a prosperous country into an economic ditch. Now, maybe you think it's an unfair example. I'm not sure why, but okay. We'll ignore the fact that leftist activists celebrated it as a great socialist success right up until it wasn't. But what about Western European countries? Don't they have socialist economies? People seem pretty happy there. Why can't we have what they have? Free healthcare, free college, stronger unions. Good question, and the answer may surprise you. There are no socialist countries in Western Europe. Most are just as capitalist as the United States. The only difference, and it's a big one, is that they offer more government benefits than the US does. We can argue about the cost of these benefits and the point at which they reduce individual initiative, thus doing more harm than good. Scandinavians have been debating those questions for years, but only a free market capitalist economy can produce the wealth necessary to sustain all of the supposedly free stuff Europeans enjoy. To get the free stuff, after all, you have to create enough wealth to generate enough tax revenue to pay for everything the government gives away. Without capitalism, you're Venezuela. In a 2015 speech at Harvard, Denmark's prime minister took great pains to make this point. I know that some people in the US associate the Nordic model with socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. So when you point to Denmark as a paragon of socialism, you're really singing the praises of capitalism. The more capitalism, the less socialism you need. Look at America since 2017. A policy of lower taxes and less government regulation, that's more capitalism, has led to a robust economic expansion, something thought impossible just a few years earlier. Unemployment, notably among minority groups, typically most at risk for poverty, is at a generational low. Economic expansion gets people off welfare and into work. That's less socialism. None of this requires a degree in economics. Common sense is all you need. That's why it's so frustrating to see young people praising socialism and criticizing capitalism. It's bad enough that they're working against their own interests, better job prospects, better wages, personal freedom. But they're also working against the interest of the less fortunate. Capitalism leads to economic democracy. Socialism leads to the economic dictatorship of the elite. Always and everywhere. So beware what you ask for. You just might get it. I'm Andy Puzder, the author of The Capitalist Comeback for Prager University.
Yeah. We're gonna say
gold.
Yeah.
Absolute comedy gold. I mean, yeah, capitalism does such a great job keeping us stocked with toilet paper.
Yeah,
I'm
especially
this came out before 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I reviewed I co-wrote with Nathan Robinson a review of Glenn Beck's book "Argue with Socialists" for Current Affairs last summer, and like a hilarious thing at the end of that book is that in singing the praises of capitalism, he's talking about how life is so much better than it was 100 years ago, and two of the things he mentions are the Spanish flu and toilet paper shortages, which of course, at that point, the United States was dealing with because of supply chain issues that do in fact have a lot to do with profit incentives. There was no American gosh plan doing bad, economic planning to make the toilet paper run out when the pandemic started. But yeah, I mean, I guess the two things that immediately come to mind for me about this one are one, there's that awesome double standard where he's talking about Venezuela and Western Europe, says, well, look, socialism means Venezuela, and for some reason, socialists don't like it when we talk about Venezuela, but I mean, that's clearly what it means. And on the one hand, well, there's nothing socialist about Western Europe. And at this point, we did the first, formerly Sunday night debate breakdowns, but we did the first Thursday night one last Thursday, and Jake brought up that classic meme, with the two guys yelling at each other, and one of them is, socialism is awesome. Look at whatever it was, Sweden, and the other guy says, oh, well, that's not socialism. That's just capitalism with social welfare policies. And so the first guy says, great, can we have capitalism with social welfare policies? The first one says, no, that would be socialism. And that's definitely the vibe I get for this video, because at the height of Hugo Chavez's welfare state, you can look this up, the proportion of Venezuelans employed, sorry, I think I froze up for a second. At the height of Hugo Chavez's welfare state, the proportion of Venezuelans employed by the public sector was actually lower than the proportion of French people employed by the public sector, and much lower than the percentages in the Nordic countries. So if the various European countries that are social democratic success stories aren't socialist, then Venezuela is even less socialist. I mean, I think the real story there is that it's so if you're in the imperial backyard in Latin America, trying to achieve even very mild social democratic reforms puts you on a collision course, with certainly the United States and also local elites, and none of this to deny the existence of incompetence or mismanagement, within especially after Chavez died and Maduro took over, but like clearly you can't blame the public sector being too big. They're being like, I like, even if you don't want to define socialism as like workers control the means of production, even if you just want to define it as state ownership, and you want to talk that way, that it comes in degrees, it's not just binary. Well, if so, France is still more socialist than Venezuela does. So I think the way he's trying to have it both ways there doesn't really make sense. You guys have thoughts?
Most of my thoughts are just completely blown out because I'm just like there's just so much, Sorry. There's just so like he just kept going like a rapid pace and he's saying so much about everything and so little about Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We have that together. Jake, you got anything? Jump in.
Well, I mean, it's definitely not the first time in which I've seen socialist states just defined by which ones are either mismanaged or like you mentioned are suffer from circumstances outside of their control, right? But all that said, I mean, I guess it's interesting. I've never really watched this stuff because of, I think, the lack of a desire to torture myself. But it is. I remember when we were talking about our debate with Charlie Kirk and Hassan, we were talking about creating this narrative, and it is slickly produced, and I could see how it is creating a viable narrative better than even Charlie was able to. During the debate. So it's interesting to think about, how to counter that narrative.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, the part about Lars Rasmussen that really gets me. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit so I'm getting my own crack at Charlie at the beginning of October in Arizona. So we were watching the Charlie Kirk Hassan Piker debate last Thursday. There's no Thursday night debate breakdown this Thursday because I'm going to be on my way to New York, but also no regular episode on Monday because I'll be coming back. We'll do some kind of stream on Tuesday so people don't have to wait too long. And we'll be doing a couple Thursdays. We'll be doing the Vosh Charlie Kirk one. But one of the things that we're talking about, I think, while talking about the Charlie Kirk Hassan Piker debate, is that you really see this sort of weird assumption all the time when right wingers talk about the Nordics that, and I mean, to be fair, this PragerU video did less of it, right? Because there was at least a passing mention of the existence of debates about these things in various European countries. Usually they do this weird shit, like they'll say, "Oh, Sweden realized that such and such program wasn't working, and they had to roll it back," as if this were just like this collective, like the Swedish hive mind had just made this technocratic determination, and this wasn't a result of ideological struggle and like right-wing parties winning and carrying out their policies. But I think you do see that like Nordic hive mind assumption a little bit when he brings up Lars Rasmussen, because yeah, sure, there's this like center-right head of state doesn't want to associate the popular programs in his country with socialism. No shit. I mean, that's like that'll be like if you said, well, like the equivalent would be saying, well, Bernie Sanders says such and such about the relationship between Social Security and socialism, and just taking that as decisive. Bernie Sanders said it. This is the mirror universe version of that. Lars Rasmussen says that there's nothing socialist about this stuff, and of course it's not. I mean, because these are still fundamentally capitalist economies. No doubt. That workers certainly don't run their own workplaces, etc. But also, though, these extensive social democratic welfare states, these did not come out. These did not just like emerge from the hive mind of Nordic culture. These came about as a result of really fierce class struggle, and like really militant industrial unions allied with labor and socialist parties, over the course of a very long period of time. These are hard-won gains, and if you talk to a Danish socialist, of which there are very many, of various shades and degrees of radicalism, instead of talking to Lars Rasmussen, you get a very different story.